Welcome to another episode of Software Explorations, Concepts and Overviews, hosted by yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. In today's episode, we are specifically going to be addressing a comment that was left for me by J5 on a video that I did a few weeks ago that said, can you make a video about interview questions for a junior QA position and provide some talking points about quality engineering versus quality assurance? All right. So we are going to go into that. Specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to revisit a presentation that I did when I first got started on the channel. It was actually two presentations, one on QA engineering and one on QA engineers. So I just did a presentation for that. I repurposed that presentation and I presented that to the Grammar Hub Discord group last week. And I want to redo that presentation for you all so that you can get a better understanding about QA engineering, what QA engineers do, the difference between a QA tester, and then at the end of the video, I'll also get into some questions that a junior QA person might have in an interview and some things that they should ask. For me, honestly, like when I've been doing interviews for different levels of QA, it's really the same interview, but the way that we grade the interview is based on the level that you're applying for. So we'll go through some questions and we'll give some ideas about that as well. All right. So let's get started. All right, let's get to it. So let's get into a brief introduction about QA engineering, and then we're going to talk about QA engineers and QA testing. All right. All right. So what is the history of QA, right? We're going to talk about what is QA, the roles in QA, who are QA engineers, and should you consider becoming a QA engineer? So what is QA? QA is the maintenance of a desired level of quality in a service or a product, especially by means of attention to every stage of the process of delivery or production. All right. So, and QA goes way beyond only like IT and stuff like that. There has been QA for and everything, like from inspecting products during manufacturing to, car production, whatever the case might be, right? There's always been QA, but it's become a very big thing in the technology industry because software needs to be tested and there is a process and a procedure for doing that. So we're going to run down a quick list of all the different types of QA, right? And this is by all means, there's more than this, but this is like the most common that you'd run across, right? So first and foremost, there's unit tests and there's integration tests. There's end-to-end testing. There's manual testing. There's automation testing. There's AI testing, functional testing, visual, performance, regression, compatibility, accessibility, smoke, sanity, white box, black box, gray box, and different types of AUTs, right? So when you look at this list, it looks like, oh my goodness, there's like so much different types of things that QA engineers do. Well, not all of them are performed by QA engineers. And trust me, like once we get to the next slide, you're going to see that a lot of these blend together. And it looks like a very long list, but you only end up doing a portion of these on a day-to-day basis, on a regular basis, all right? So QA in real life. QA involves, this is pretty much what I do on a daily basis, right? I'm involved in the Scrum process, giving insight to testing, potential risk, and customer perspective. I'm a part of like pretty much all the meetings that the team has. Being in QA, like you are a part of the team. Like it's not like, oh, the developers do the work and then they just hand it off to you. No. You have to be involved at the very, very beginning, especially as a QA engineer, because there is valuable insight and perspective that you can give that sometimes people who do not have that testing mindset can think of, right? So it's a very collaborative process. And then we also write automated tests as well as an aspect of manual testing. It's a very, very dynamic role. I can see sometimes I'm writing different like scripts that are not like necessarily automated scripts for automated testing, but I'm writing scripts that do various functionalities. Like one of my most recent scripts was writing a script that would connect to the Amazon AWS, like the S3, and do some find some files in there and then and create some jobs. It saved us a lot of time, but that's not necessarily QA. But you can find yourself you can get involved in those type of things as a QA engineer, as long as you are willing and you're interested in doing more and going further, All right. So what are some roles in QA? So there's QA tester, there's QA and a QA specialist, right? To me, the tester and the specialist, They're about the same thing now. I think it's transitioning more into having the title of specialist. There is a QA engineer, there's software developer and test, and then there's QA management. So in management, you could be like a QA manager, a senior manager, a director, whatever management path they have. And then like for QA engineer, you can be a QA engineer one, two, three, QA, senior QA, lead QA, principal QA, staff QA, whatever the organization has. But those roles are more individual contribution, while the management roles are like where you're in charge of a group of people, right? Then there's software developer and test, which is more of a developer, but they write code that is meant for testing, right? So we can probably make another video about software development and test and talk about that at another date. So what do we do as QA engineers, right? So we have a unique role, right? QA engineers have a unique role as they are heavily involved in the software development lifecycle, as well as building out the testing infrastructure. Not only the test scripts and cases and stuff like that, but we're also building out the testing infrastructure to reduce the burden of manual testing, right? Because like I personally, I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's just impossible. So I always like, even if I have to spend a little bit more time to find a way to get it to work in an automated fashion, that's what I'm going to do so that I can end up helping out the entire team, the entire organization, so that we can have a very good structure in place. So, is QA engineering for you, or is QA in general for you, right? So, the questions that I would ask myself is, are you a critical thinker? Are you resourceful? Like, do you know how to find answers to problems? Are you innovative and solutions oriented, right? I think that's probably one of the most important. Are you able to pick up on new coding languages and concepts quickly? So those are the questions that I would ask myself to see, is this for me? It's a lot of work, but it is very fun and rewarding in my perspective. So let's talk about the overview of a QA engineer. So what is a QA engineer, right? So kind of touching on what we were talking about a little bit earlier, QA engineers provide solutions to simplify software testing, right? That is our goal, to make a repeatable process, make it easy to understand. We don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again, right? We also ensure that software goes to market with minimal risk. There's always some type of risk. There's always going to be something that makes it to production, but we want it to be very, very minimal, nothing obvious, nothing that is super customer impacting and breaking, right? And we push the evolution and innovation of QA practices, always trying to find how to do things better, how to do things new, more efficiently. So and I'm always looking for that, like how can I push further? How can I make what else can we do, right? To make it easier for us, to make it more like to solidify our practices so that we don't have to like think about it too hard. It's like, okay, we set the structure in place and we follow that structure, and then we have good results. Right. So what are some attributes of a QA engineer, right? So I'll say the number, like all these are like super important. You can't really number them, right? But you need to have great attention to detail. You need to be a very, very good critical thinker, because you're going to have to solve a lot of problems, right? And figure things out. And you have to do it quickly, because you might have like you might be one QA engineer working with four developers, and they're sending different things that are being finished your way. And you need like, so a lot of times you don't really understand it. So you need to be able to pick up on your feet quickly, and be like, what I normally do is, as they're explaining to me, I repeat it back to them to make sure that I'm on the right path, right? Then you have to be an expert communicator to be able to articulate your point. But also, to be an expert communicator, you have to be a great listener, right? And to me, I think the starting point of communication is being able to listen. And then you need to have patience, because sometimes you're going to be waiting, sometimes you're going to be reporting an issue, and then they say it's fixed and it's not fixed, and you have to go back and forth. But you can't get frustrated. You have to be patient. But along with patient, you have to be assertive, because guess what? The quality of the software relies on you. So if someone says, "Oh, I don't see it," or "I don't think that it's a problem," you need to be assertive and say, "No, this is a problem, and this is and we need to get it addressed, and then we can work together on getting that addressed." But first, you got to admit that there is a problem in order to get it resolved, and that's the assertiveness that you need to provide, so that they can actually see, like, this is a bad user experience, right? So, what kind of education and training do you need to become a Q engineer? So honestly, like, I would say that based on what applications are asking or job descriptions are asking for, college degrees is probably the most important one, although it's probably going to be the least used in the Q engineering field, right? Online courses are great. They teach you very good, like they teach you great things about QA and everything like that. However, you don't see a job that's saying, "Oh, I want you to take an online course in order to be able to apply." Right? Then you can get certificates if that's what you're into. I don't really think certificates make that big of a difference in the QA field, but some people they live by certificates, so that's what it is. Then there are boot camps that you can take to learn about QA. There's internships. A lot of these boot camps offer internships. I'm not if it's not an internship for a real company, I don't really think that it makes that's really valid. But you can learn how to do some things. But that's one of the possibilities. And then there's also you can volunteer as a QA tester, QA engineer for maybe a nonprofit or a startup or an open source, something like that, right? But college degrees, they always seem to take precedence, although to me, honestly, from what I've seen, they like you don't learn anything in college about testing. You learn a lot more in the online courses about testing. But, companies still prefer you to have a college degree. What I would do, right? You can take this for what it's worth. I would like while I'm in college learning like everything about computer science, I would if you were interested in getting into QA, I would also go and take an online course about QA so that now when I start applying, I actually know what I'm talking about and it's not just what they like the one day of unit testing that they taught you in college, right? So that's from the educational aspect. Right. So, what is the job outlook and the salary? Right. So, the current job market for Q engineers, I like it's weird because I think the field is so saturated right now by boot camps that like they say, okay, just come do manual testing, come do automation testing, and you have so many people running around with no experience, and the people who always tend to land on their feet in this industry are the people who have been doing QA for a long time, and especially if they are Q engineers who do automation and type of infrastructure and stuff like that. But I think for the people trying to transition, it is very, very hard right now. So you need to actually level up your skills and not just rely on the thing that they taught you. And that's one of the reasons that I have the Patreon is like finding you different strategies so that you can actually enhance your skills and not necessarily have to be like forced to go for the entry level. And then trying to find different ways to get experience so that you can have something on your resume that resonates with the hiring managers and recruiters, right? So salary ranges for entry level and experienced testers, right? I would say from what I've seen, depending on your location, you could like for QA tester, QA engineer, you're probably looking at like 50 to 65,000. Sometimes it's lower depending on the state. Sometimes it's higher. And then for experienced QA engineers, especially if you do automation and infrastructure and stuff like that, you could probably be like I've seen some positions for like lower like on the lower end for senior from like 85, and then I've seen and it can go as high like in QA to, you know, 150, and if you're in management, it goes even higher, So it just depends, right? But it's a wide range based on your skill set. So I would look into it, but right now it is kind of tough finding a job in QA, especially at a lower level because the market is so saturated because everyone and their grandma and their grandma's cousin are going to boot camps for QA engineering, and so like now these people are getting like thousands of applicants, and then the resumes aren't that good. So if you like, you should go check out the crappy resumes video that I made so that you can see how you can probably level up your resume a little bit if you're interested in this field. And it applies for any field as well. So, what are some of the roles and responsibilities of a QA engineer? Right. So, the role of a QA engineer in the software development lifecycle is testing software, no doubt, right? Reporting defects, of course. Collaborating with software engineers, so and everyone else, right? It's not only the software engineers, but you collaborate with the scrum master, the product owner, sometimes the customer success managers, sometimes the solutions engineers. You can be talking to stakeholders, and you can be talking to DevOps. Who knows, right? So many different people that you can collaborate with that you can make sure that things are going in the right direction. Then you have the responsibility of simplifying the testing approach. We don't like complication. We want it to be straightforward, easy to understand. writing automation, and provide additional perspective because a lot of times people don't see things from a QA perspective. You have a lot of insight that others might not see. So that is definitely important. All right, so I just want to talk about like based on the question, what is a QA tester, right? Give a brief overview on that. So QA testers, they focus primarily on testing software applications to identify defects or issues. They execute test cases, scenarios, and scripts to verify that the software functions correctly and meets the specified requirements, right? And they may perform manual testing as well as automated testing or both, right? And a lot of times for the QA testers, they might not be necessarily writing it, but they can be able to execute it and review the results for the automated tests. In addition, they will report bugs, defects, or issues found during testing and work with developers to resolve them. Typically, they have a strong understanding of testing methodologies, testing tools, and software quality assurance principles, right? So that's the QA tester. Now, what about the QA engineer? So in addition to testing, the QA engineers are involved in designing and implementing testing frameworks, processes, and strategies. They often have a deeper understanding of software development principles and may contribute to the design and architecture of test automation solutions, right? So that might be like spinning up the different environments that the test can run in. It could be doing something with the CI/CD pipeline. It could be reporting metrics and stuff like that, right? So many different things that the QA engineers can do, right? They're also responsible for creating and maintaining automated test scripts, integrating testing into continuous integration, continuous deployment, CI/CD pipelines, and ensuring overall test coverage. And to finish it up, they collaborate closely with developers, product managers, and other stakeholders to ensure that quality is built into the software throughout the development lifecycle. So like I said, throughout the whole process, the QA engineers are often involved in analyzing requirements and providing input on how to make software more testable and resilient to defects. Right? So how to have success as a QA engineer? So like you want to level up your skills and stand out on the market because like I said, it is very saturated right now. You need to find a way to separate yourself. You must explore new softwares and technologies, which is something that I always have my tech barbarians doing. And then you want to network with other QA engineers and IT professionals. And one thing that I also recommend is building a portfolio for QA. If you're not sure how to do that, I have another video that I talk about how you can build your own QA portfolio, and I will link it so that you can get to it and if find out more about that. All right. So in conclusion, we talked about the responsibilities of a QA engineer, the skills that they require, the type of education that might be required, the job outlook and salary, being successful as a QA engineer. And the question for you is do you think this is something for you, right? It's really for you to decide, but like I said, it is a bit challenging to get into. Right, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment and I will be sure to respond to you. I hope this gave you a good insight and overview on what it is to be a QA engineer. So that is the basic overview of QA engineering and what QA engineers do. And I did want to take a few minutes to talk about some of the questions that you might get as a junior QA applying for a job. All right, so I'm not going to share, I can share some specific questions, but basically what we're going to what we'll talk about is what are the basic testing concepts, right? Like the different types of tests that you would do, the different levels, the different stages that you would do, how you would design your test cases, right? Usually, like from a lot of the interviews that I've been to, I've been given a project to do, and then we have an interview where I can explain the project and why I wrote the automation code the way that I did, right? So that is something that that it's so much easier to do it that way than to just like answer questions arbitrarily where you can actually show your work, right? And if you can't show your work, if you don't do like some type of technical project, then that is one of the areas that you can use your QA portfolio so that you can show your work, So definitely basic questions about testing, the difference between functional testing, non-functional testing, unit testing, black box testing, white box testing. And when I interview, it's very conversational, right? So it's not like, I'm expecting the specific answer. I just like to see how you think, right? So some questions about test case designs, your approach to creating test cases for a new feature. What factors do you consider when prioritizing a test case? Questions like that. The type of testings, how would you approach testing after you found a bug? What type of testing you would do? Um, what type of testing you would do when you are first getting started working on a you know testing out a new feature. Like, how would you get started? Things like that. Um, then another question around how you manage your defects. How do you prioritize and classify your defects? What is the? I would ask you how you would structure a defect report, right? In your bug report, what you have in there, and then we can start talking about different testing tools, like your familiarity with automation. Then we would have some scenarios about like, okay, this is the situation, and what would you do? So we can see like your critical thinking skills and questions around that. How you collaborate with other people would be like throughout the whole interview. I'd be looking for your communication skills. How do you collaborate with people? How you get along with other teams and things like that, and how you'd handle getting feedback, right? And lastly, like I would ask you about like, okay, what are some of your personal experiences? How do you learn to like how do you continue growing in the industry and things like that, right? So those are like kind of the questions that like when I have interviews, it's kind of like how I structure my questions to find out like I really want to extract that information from the person to see like do they know what they're talking about? Would they be a good fit? Um, those type of questions is what is typically what I'm thinking about. And I like to try to get a better understanding of the person's mindset and not like are they able to like did they just study a bunch of questions and then they're just regurgitating the answers and that's why like I'll go a little extra layer deep when I'm interviewing. I'm like, okay, I'll ask you a question, then you give me this answer. I'm like, okay, tell me about this part, and I'll definitely be going through your resume and things like that, right? So I think the way that I interview is a little bit different than how most QA interviews go, but I'm able to get a lot more out of the person and see if they're really a good fit for the position. All right. So that is how I would go about interviewing and answering interview questions. But I would be honest, be myself, and if the more you keep learning, the more you continue to level up, it's going to be a lot easier for you to articulate all the things that you know when you are in an interview, and it's going to give you a strong, strong sense of confidence. All right. So that is that. Hopefully you found that helpful. Hopefully you found that informative. But I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully it helps. Please do me a favor before you leave. You hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can know every time we go live. Like the video, share with everybody, right? And if you need additional one-on-one help, go ahead to www.techcoachralph.dev where you can sign up for one-on-one coaching as well as additional exclusive content that is not on YouTube, all right? So thank you so much for tuning in. This is Tech Coach Ralph, where we are engineered to win, and I am out.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.